Hello and welcome to New People, New Ways, podcast brought to you in partnership with Fresh Expressions Florida and Fresh Expressions United Methodist, where we explore new ways of being church through the stories, insights of scholars and practitioners alike. I'm Jessica Taylor, your co-host, Associate Director of Fresh Expressions United Methodist, and cultivator of Fresh Expressions for the Florida Conference.
And I'm Michael Adam Beck. I'm the Director of Fresh Expressions Florida and Fresh Expressions UM. And today we are joined by my friend, Lori Jennings. Lori's the Vice President of American Baptist Churches of Pennsylvania and Delaware. She's the head coach of the leadership team and home church leader for GraceCrossing Community Church in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, which you're going to get to learn more about that. Lori also serves as a short-term missionary in Uganda, Africa, and is preparing for her third trip in July 2024 to combat the ugly truth of the prosperity gospel by sharing truth with pastors there and teaching children about the real living God and the hope we can have in Christ. Her day job, by the way, her daytime career, is at the public information officer for the Township of Lower Merion in Ardmore, Pennsylvania. And she's married to Ronnie, has 2 children, 2 grandchildren, and countless kids that call her mom, both in the Phoenixville area and Uganda. Lori, thank you so much for joining us today and giving us your time.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here with you both.
Yeah, so we always like to start off with this question. Who is Lori Jennings?
Lori Jennings is a completely unqualified person who God has called to do a bunch of crazy things that I always feel unprepared for, but God somehow comes through and saves the day and gives me all the tools and people and things that I need to accomplish the goals that He has set before me that I keep saying no to. And God says, oh, yeah, you are. And so then I finally give in, a little bit of Jonah, and the big fish comes and swallows me up and spits me out. And then I finally give in and say, all right, God, what do you want me to do?
You know, there's kind of like a whole history with that in the Bible, right? Of like Moses and Jonah and Sarah, like God calling for these big things. And they're all like, nope, don't want to do that. Sorry, I'm not the one. You got to be talking to somebody else, right? Not me, not this person. But I love that you bring your humility to that, but that you say yes to God. And sometimes after you get spit out of the fish, but
yeah, I think I'm trying to be less like Jonah and more like Esther, and to be more of a person who moves forward without God having to prod me first. But sometimes Jonah comes back.
Amen. There's maybe a little Jonah in all of us, probably. So I want to hear about this one of your fresh expressions. I know you have a couple going, but could you tell us about the one that's meeting in your home, how your role in that, how it started, what it looks like?
Yeah, sure. So we have a home church. It's a home church, dinner church kind of hybrid. And we have a meal together, and then we have some Bible study together where we just pick a verse or a passage in the Bible and read it and discuss it. What do we learn about it? And what do we hear? And I think that you could have read that verse or that chapter in the Bible 40 times, 100 times, but you read it that time, that night, and you hear something completely different God is saying to you. And it's really interesting to hear what God is saying to other people when we're going through those Bible passages and discussing them. And, we have people think they can't start a fresh expression, that it's going to be too much work. It's really doing home church is the least prep I've ever had for any kind of gathering. The hardest thing is making sure that my house is somewhat presentable and there's only 1 inch of dust instead of 10. I don't know. It is what it is. They're all friends. So there's dog hair, there's dust bunnies, and it's okay. and everyone is just happy to be there. And I want people to feel comfortable when they come in my house. It is not a museum. Take off your shoes, show up in your sweatpants, and just be here to talk about Jesus, and it's all good.
I recently read something, and I wish I could quote it directly, but I'm just not going to be able to. But it was like the compliment of somebody being able to come into your home and just open the cabinet and know exactly where something is. Like, that is the welcomeness, and that's the hospitality that we should have in home church. And I know we do church in our home, and it's constantly a mix of the toys are all over the floor, but also the kids know where to put them back, and it's not going to be perfectly clean, and people know where to get the dishes and the cups, and they know where to come. And it's kind of this mix of it's family. It's an extension of a family dinner. Like, we all just feel like family, and people come together and feel comfortable. And that's what church should feel like. But home church just gives this extra cozy element to it. So can you share kind of like a story of discipleship coming out of home church, and maybe somebody who's come into faith from home church?
Our home church is about a year old at this point. But I think what I'm seeing, not yet some new converted people into home church, but some really deep growth in the folks that are coming. So it's become a safe space for some people that may have been hurt by church, but it's also become a space where questions can be asked that you might not feel so comfortable asking in a traditional church setting. You can ask those hard questions, and you know, as a young person, that we have a 14-year-old in our home church who can really ask some questions that they feel it's a safe place to ask them, that they might not ask in front of some of the older saints in our church, that they might not feel comfortable asking. And I'm so grateful that they feel like they can ask, why did God do that? Why is God not fixing that? What is he thinking? And we can just sit down and talk about it. And if it goes off the rails a little bit from what our original Bible study was supposed to be, it's okay. It's not a problem. We're going to go where the Spirit leads us, and we're not going to stick to a program. That is not what we're going to do.
Yeah. And Michael, you have a home church too, right? That meets your breathe groups, right? What kind of discipleship do you see in that home group?
Yeah, for sure. And Lori, I love like the simplicity that you named, and the communitarian kind of like shared leadership way of it all. And maybe the first church was onto something in Acts 2, where they met together and broke bread together in their homes with generous hearts and gave thanks to God and dedicated themselves to the apostles' teaching, the breaking of the bread, and the prayers. Maybe that simplicity was how the church kind of flourished all across the Roman Empire. Who knows? But I was just thinking, like, last night at Burritos and Bibles, I love that, like, you don't have to have your commentary out, and you don't have to write out a sermon plan or any of that. You just kind of read. So we were doing this last night, and we had like a young man, 10 years old, kind of read, and then we had an adult. And Jasmine, who is a relatively new Christian, I just baptized her a couple months ago. She's participating in Burritos and Bibles. She openly shares about this on her social media. And I said, Jasmine, next week, why don't you bring the story? Why don't you bring the scripture and lead that conversation? And she was having like that Jonah moment, like, me? Wait, hold on. Da, 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 da.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, get somebody else in the group. But then as we had conversation about it, she got really excited about it. So she's going to do that next week and lead us. And I feel like with our house church, it's more of all the people in the different fresh expressions who maybe don't see each other or connect. We invite them to our home once a month. We have a big meal, and then we break down into these small groups, these breath groups we call them, where men with men, women with women. And we do like deep discipleship. How goes it with your soul? We get really specific, like, what struggles did you have this past month? Where did you sin? Kind of things, like. And then a group of us men together where we are in a group text and we're encouraging each other. We're sending each other scriptures and all those things. And the women, they do their thing. Who knows what they do? They always take longer than us. So we're always in the next room waiting, like, when are they going to be done? Just kidding. But so that's how we do our home groups. Meal together, everybody. We have kind of a prayer, spiritual combo. Then we break out and do like pretty intentional discipleship things. And we do see people, growing in Christ and growing in grace and taking leadership in different things.
Yeah. I think that if you feel intimidated by starting a home, you can do home church without the meal if that seems intimidating, but guaranteed that first home church, I prepared the meal. Someone is going to volunteer to bring it, because you say you can just bring pizza. You can just, bring sandwiches. You can bring whatever. Everyone will just eat whatever is brought. It doesn't have to be this home cooked, elaborate kind of meal. And people do step up from week to week and participate and help in that. And so it doesn't have to feel that intimidating. You just provide some plates and forks and someone's going to bring it in. And so last week I wasn't available for home church in my house. I had to work my daytime job. And so someone else led, and everything went great, and they can do that. And I said, who's going to lead? Because I'm not going to be here. And someone raised their hand right away. And somebody else was like, I'll bring the dinner. And they just enjoy being together and having those discussions, and enjoy being part of a community where they feel like it's safe and they can ask questions and have discussion and read things in the Bible that they never thought that they would have ever heard before.
One of the things we recently started listening to is how expensive everything's gotten in the world. Inflation, prices of food is going up. People are spending almost twice as much on groceries as they would have spent otherwise. And the natural consequence, or the natural thing of that, is that families are going more in debt. So we started within our team looking at what are the needs of the community. And so one of the things we're starting up now is this: everybody brings a piece. And as we're all bringing pieces, we're creating a meal together, but it's not super organized. It's super informal. We're not inviting to a program. It is inviting to a community where we can share and meal together and share everything we have, so that it's less expensive. When there's families that households that are just one person, and they're making their payments every month for their house, they're also paying bills, but there's only one income coming into that family, then it's really difficult to be able to afford food. Same with a family who has 6 people in the house and only 2 incomes. There's that split. And when we come together, that's that bridge of home church. Home church can really be that bridge that in the local community, in your neighborhood, just a walking distance away, could be church. And it could happen every night. It could happen any night of the week. It could even happen on breakfast or lunch on the weekends, or whenever people are gathering. So that's kind of an easy entry point into Fresh Expressions. I think some people are definitely, like you said, intimidated by doing a dinner church, or by doing a whole dinner. But if we're all bringing pieces, we're bringing it together.
Right. Yeah. I think, and you spoke about listening to what the needs are of the community. And that's one of the things that we did for another Fresh Expression for this camp that we do for a whole week in the summertime, because there was a need in our community. So there's a time when the camps and that maybe are sponsored by local townships or local governments that are low cost, or even the schools sometimes have them. And before school starts, there's this couple of weeks where there's no camps, and we have working parents that can't afford to take off. And so we started this camp. So one of the things that we realized is that there are some lower income folks who very much took part of this, who took advantage of this camp. And we're so happy to have them. They're coming back again this year for another week. But we wanted to connect with them even further. And so we're going to do a messy church. So we're going to invite the families to come and have a meal. That's going to be such a big benefit for them. So with the kids in the camp, we're providing breakfast and lunch and snacks, which is a huge burden relief off of these families for feeding. As you said, how much the groceries are costing nowadays. So we're also going to do, for those families, we're going to do a messy church where we are going to, the people of the church are going to provide a meal for these folks and be able to sit down and not just get to know the kids, but get to know the families and what kind of needs that they have. That you have to talk to people in your community to find out what their needs are. And so we're hoping to meet some of those needs in that way with connecting with the whole family and not just with the kids in a deeper way.
I love how you brought up that camp. We have the same thing in our context, apparently. This is a very common thing where in between the low-cost camps, there's this break. And the price of paying a babysitter every hour is insane. And for everybody to kind of go into that space. And we're thinking of what does it look like to do this ecumenically? Like, how can we just partner with, you've got a space, you've got a bus, we've got kids that need a place to go. Let's get together. Let's all get our volunteers and let's help out the community. Let's bus these kids over to this big space where we know they can play, where they know they have bathrooms and a kitchen. But what does it look like for us all to work together to really meet the needs of the community and know that that might not lead to anything. That might not lead to them coming to our church on Sunday morning, but it's a relationship that they never had before. And we know that we're filling that need. So what does that look like to do that in the whole of the church? I think that's beautiful.
One of when I reached out to the families to do camp again this year, one of the moms said, every time we drive by your church building, my daughter, who's only 8, she said, that's my church. She believes that that's her church and we are her church people, even though she doesn't come there on Sundays. So I'm really, we could be more of her church, I feel like. And if they're coming to us for a messy church, and getting some more connection, they may never, and I don't really care whether or not they show up on a Sunday morning. I really don't. Butts and pews is not what this is about. It's about, God using us to change people's lives and to have them know Christ. And if that's what happens out of this, success. That's it. That's all that we really want to see, right?
And sometimes you get the grumblings of people going, well, we're just babysitting these kids, but it's not just babysitting. You've created a relationship now that 8-year-old child claims that is her church. And now you've created that relationship that can start that messy church. You've got people who, you can start and be on the team to launch that messy church out and to start it. And you wouldn't have that had you not done the camp. Right. So it's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful way of listening.
The camp was definitely a Jonah moment for me because I kind of had this pop of idea and I didn't want to do it. It's too much work. I don't have the people to do it. I had all the reasons. I could list them out. All the reasons why I'm not doing it, God. And God would not leave me alone about it. And I went to one of my other leaders and I said, what do you think about this? And she said, I think we should do it. And I said, what are you talking about? I thought that she would be like, we can't do that. And then so we asked someone else. And so we have some people, we're very blessed to have some people who teach in schools that have summers off. And so we were able to have some people. I take a week off from my daytime job to do this, but we had people. And what happened was the most beautiful part of the local church being in a Fresh Expression is everyone in our church had a part in this camp, whether they came and cooked the breakfast for us and cleaned it up, whether they came and did lunch, they provided us snacks, they prayed for us every single day that the kids were coming in, or they showed up. We had some elderly saints who came in at the end of the day who helped us clean the bathrooms and get everything ready for the next day. Every single person in our small local church was a part of that, even if they weren't there, blood, sweat, and tears every single day running around with the kids. Sometimes it was just them coming into the church building, watching us through the double doors, through the windows, seeing us having a dance party with kids dancing around or playing beach ball, volleyball, and they were just standing out there smiling at us. And they were just a huge part and a huge support to this. So your local church can definitely play a part in it, even if they're not the ones actually doing the camp. They can have a part in everything. And sometimes you just have to ask.
Lori, I love just the simplicity that you bring to this, and how, church gets kind of overly complicated sometimes, and the way we think about it. But here you're a layperson, right, with a full-time job, but you're also a director over a whole area, Pennsylvania and Delaware, of all the American Baptist churches. You're doing this locally. You're starting these fresh expressions yourself in your home and in these camps. And then you're trying to help seed that imagination across your people, the area of your responsibility. So for our audience does typically skew more Methodist. So it could be super helpful to help us think about what American Baptist belief is and your core theology. So why are you American Baptist? What are the theological pieces that are like your primary, principles and then how is maybe, I know this is a lot of questions in one, and I'll try to help guide you through it, but how does maybe Fresh Expressions bring back some of those core early Baptist ideas that maybe get lost sometimes over the history and the hierarchy and the institution, but that kind of gets you back to like who you were in the beginning anyway?
Yeah. I would say if anyone asks, like you did, what is an American Baptist? I think American Baptists are missionaries. So we're missionaries in our local context, but also throughout the world. And that's one thing I love, the mission mindedness of being an American Baptist, the authority of God and God's word over our lives. That is the highest thing. We American Baptists believe in the autonomy of the local church. So we may have some differences along the way in all of our local churches, but that we don't have a hierarchy except for God. God is our leader and who should be driving our churches and what missions they are doing. And all the other kinds of things that our different denominations have made really important, I'm not so sure that they are as important to God as reaching his people and letting them know what his love looks like. And so I feel like if we can draw closer into what God is really looking for us to do, and not make denomination our sacred cow, and make God the hierarchy of our churches and how we're leading our churches, then that's what's really going to be pleasing to God. And that's where we're going to see success, because God blesses what blesses God.
Yeah, I've heard you say before, like, even if there was not an American Baptist denomination, you believe in the American Baptist principles.
Right.
You would live your life by those. And that things like Fresh Expressions, micro church, those kind of communities actually are missional communities, right? That are contextually based. So we start with that listening and loving, and we don't think of mission just that it's over across the pond somewhere where we send people. It is there, but it's also in our neighborhood, in our local, where we live, in our zip code. And so I see you kind of embodying that. I love what you said about just the things that we kind of take our positions on in denominations, right? And we like draw back into, and I do want to just tell our audience, Lori is the contributor for a forthcoming book called An Ecumenical Field Guide to Fresh Expression. So it'll be out in August. And the idea behind that book is that, like, if there's something that all Christians should be able to rally behind, right? That it's sharing the gospel in the world, that it's going out to people who it's not just good news, but it's news, who maybe have never heard the good news before, and creating communal life in Jesus that heals, that restores, kind of like what you described in your home church, where you have young people really on a journey of grace and discipleship, kind of who really won't connect probably with Inherited Church ever, but you found a way to be church with them. And I just have a lot of hope that I hope we together as the body of Christ, no matter what our distinctions are, that we can kind of rally and get behind this.
Yeah, I think the three of us would never hesitate to work together and do something together, because we're different denominations. It doesn't really, that is not going to be my deciding factor in who I'm going to work with and who I'm going to lead others with. I feel like we need to join in to what God is doing and not get into his way, because we do that a lot.
Yeah.
We have a lot of young people around us that are atheist, agnostic. They're not Christian, but they have come into and are part of our church right now. And they are really focused on love. And they're like, I really don't care what the United Methodist Church believes. I really don't care what the United Methodist Church is or does or what that means to other people, because what it means locally to us is love. And it means that we're loving other people and we can come alongside that love. Mm-hmm. And that's what that means for them. And I think that we sometimes forget that younger generations really do not care about the institutions. They don't care about the denominations that are here. We have these emerging generations that are the future of the church, and they're not going to care. They're going to look at what people are doing. What are the Christians doing? And how are the Christians working together? And that's kind of the first and primary thing. So what's your view? I know you share working ecumenically. What is your hope for that big church, capital C? What do you think would be your hope for the future?
My hope would be that we realize that it's not about us, that the church capital C is not about us, those who believe, who have found our hope in Jesus, that it's about those who haven't, that we need to find ways to reach those who don't know Christ in any way that we can. And sometimes that means getting your hands dirty a little bit. It means going into uncomfortable places and spaces and outside of your comfort zone. And if you let God use you, he will give you everything that you need to succeed. And I really hope that all the denominations that we have really put their own beliefs and wants aside, and really know that when you go before Jesus, when you die, that he is not going to ask you about how many babies you baptized, how comfortable the pews were, how many programs you had. He's going to want to know how many people you shared the gospel with, how much love you showed to people who were unlovable. Those are the kind of things that you're going to be judged on yourself as a Christian, and as a leader of the church, even more responsible for that. And the Bible lays that out pretty clearly, that we have a bigger responsibility and will be judged more harshly for how we handle ourselves in teaching and reaching others for Christ. So I think that if the church can get past themselves and realize that's what it's about, we will succeed and we will be successful. And that's really my greatest hope, that we get out of God's way with all of our big ideas and just be the church in the world all together and not separate. One is not better than the other.
Yeah, when you share that, Lori, I think of like Matthew 25, the sheep and the goats, and what did you do unto the least of these, you did unto me. And I think about John's gospel, the emphasis on unity. Like Christ says, the world will know your mind by the unity that you share in each other. And I don't think we've done a great job at that as Christians in the modern world, right? Because like Jessica, Gen Z over here, telling us, hey, my generation doesn't really care about all that denominational stuff. So structurally, I think the denominations that we inhabit are kind of a mismatch for the emerging kind of social structures that are happening in the 21st century. But
Mhm.
you and I both are like really invested in these structures and these denominations, and you're tasked with basically leading a whole area, a lot of churches, and people within those. So are you seeing little pockets of hope where this kind of stuff's happening? How are you as a leader over all of that helping shift culture to embrace this kind of thinking? Is that a challenge? Are most church people like fresh expressions? Yay, I'm all in. Or do they have some apprehension, some questions?
Um, there is some apprehension and questions. Mostly it's that I can't do it because they feel like there are all these barriers in the way. And if you explain how simple you can really make it, it doesn't have to be something really complicated. A home church, even without a meal, can be very simple. If you have a Bible and you have a home, you can do a home church. It doesn't require a lot of education, except for Bible reading. And you don't have to have all the answers. You're literally just taking a passage, a Jesus story in the Bible, and discussing, Michael, what do you hear? Jessica, what stuck out to you in that passage? It's not any, I don't have to know exactly everything about what that passage is saying for it to speak to you, for God to use that passage for you to hear what he's trying to say to you, because it isn't about me. It really isn't. And I think that we need to just be the examples in our denominations, in our regions, you for Florida and for United Methodist, me for American Baptist, but also our region of Pennsylvania and Delaware. Just be out there doing it and be the example so people can see what it looks like and how it can work and how simple it is, that it doesn't need to be that intimidating. Just try doing it for a few months, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't, and we'll try something else. I think that we really want to see more churches, and what I can do is teach people that it's really not about them, that it's about reaching people for Christ. And if they have that kind of heart, I really think they're going to succeed, and I think God will bless that.
I think one of the things that I hear in that is just, it's not that hard. Don't make it harder than it has to be. And we have this like death by committees thing sometimes where we're going to plan, and then it never actually happens because we're in the planning stage forever. And I've had people call me where they're like, I started this Fresh Expression in the bowling alley and no one came, and Fresh Expressions suck. And I'm like, well, Fresh Expressions didn't suck. Like, let's go back. I mean, maybe we have to go back and listen. Like, did you listen to anybody, or did you just show up at the bowling alley and launch a program? Because Fresh Expressions really are focused on those people. We're focused to listening in on the people and on our neighbors. And before we launch anything, we know we're coming alongside the people. We're connecting them in community, and we're listening, we're loving, we're connecting that community together before anything comes out of it. And I think that's a very opposite way of how the church has been thinking, where we're going to launch a worship service, and this worship service is going to bring people to us, and that's how it's going to be. We are not inviting people to a program. We're inviting people into a relationship, and we're modeling that relationship with love and giving them that love. And from that love, from those relationships come these incredible things. These programs do come, but I think sometimes we want to rush it, and we want to rush going into it. So, I mean, you said your home church has been going on for about a year now, right? What were some of the struggles right off the bat, or some of the things that you felt when you were just starting your home church?
We did have some struggles in the beginning. And so we had some leaders who were going to rotate the meals that were kind of attending this home church, but it got to be almost like a burden. So now when we restarted the home church after a short break, I was like, all right, we're all going to share in this together. I just laid it out from the beginning. And so who's bringing dinner next week? And somebody will step up. And instead of putting it on the leaders, we just completely changed that narrative and just said, we're a family and we're going to act as if we're a family together. And we're all going to participate in this. And people like being part of a family and being part of this thing that we're doing together. And it makes them feel more a part of it if they're participating in it and just not a spectator. So I like a more biblical model of how we should do things. So if I am the facilitator of a home church, I want to be helping to spur people into their worship and relationship with God. I'm not there to entertain and teach them. I'm there to help them to connect with God better or more deeply. It is not my responsibility and my responsibility alone. So in a worship service, you have a pastor who's up there speaking, and you have a worship leader who's up there maybe leading some music. They should be spurs of the congregation in worship, and God's the audience. God's always going to be our audience, and we are not the audience. It's not about us. And so if we just change that model around a little bit, I think if our local churches could change to that model, I think local churches would look quite different.
Mm-hmm.
So you reminded me of Christmas Eve. We had Christmas Eve at home, home church style. We had people come over, and my mom came over. My mom is not a Christian. She just comes. She was coming because it was at my home. And she sees people come in. I said, oh, hey, come on in. And I hand them, a loaf of bread and a knife. I said, hey, we need these cut. And then, somebody else comes in, I hand them, broccoli and a knife. And I'm like, hey, we need these cut. And my mom's like, what is wrong with you? Jessica, you are having people come into your home and just, nothing's prepared. And they're coming in, they're preparing. And I said, they know that they've learned by now that if they don't want to help out, that they come 20 minutes late. But they always come early. So they know what they're coming into. They know they're coming to help. They know they're coming to cut the bread. They know that everything is being prepared together. And it's in those conversations that people have over cutting the bread that 3 days later, I have somebody open up and really just share their whole life story and trauma that they've been through and how they've been growing and how that experience, cutting the bread and how simple that was, how that changed their life. And it's giving people that opportunity. Yeah, they were invited to have the opportunity to be invited. Yeah,
to be invited to be part of the family. It means a lot to people. It really does. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, and it sounds like with GraceCrossing and your Fresh Expression that you are doing some kind of blending, like what you're learning in the Edge and the Fresh Expression. You're doing some things differently in your inherited congregation on Sunday mornings, because you talk about how you're kind of mixing that up a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So at our traditional worship service, whoever the speaker is, Pastor Dan, whoever it happens to be, usually it's him. He does some preaching, and then he stops and he comes down into the congregation. He doesn't stand at a pulpit, though. That's just not his style anyway. But he comes down with a microphone and asks questions of the congregation about the sermon and how it relates to their life, and some really spurring questions that people share some really deep stuff sometimes that really spoke to them during that first part of the sermon. And then he does it later on during the second part of the sermon. But what we also do is we have a time of prayer and praise where we stop and we take things that people tell us ahead or live during the service, and we live stream our service, but people talk about, My daughter has bulimia. I need prayer. And, people will go and pray with that family. And, or so-and-so, my friend, they don't have a church, but they're in the hospital. Maybe somebody goes to visit them, but people are sharing live and real and raw what's going on in their lives during our church service, that people who come in think that it's a little bit different, because this is a family. This isn't for show. And so we're really trying to incorporate some of those really life-sharing moments into our local church service that is a little bit different, and it's not fancy. We're kind of the island of the misfit toys. We have a lot of different kinds of people, and I love that. We are not fancy. We are not going to be smoke machines and fancy praise band, but we really are there and doing life together, and I think it's something really special.
So some of our listeners might be hearing, you've got this church service you're doing, you've got home church, you've got camp, you've got a messy church that you're starting soon. That's a lot of stuff. So where do you get all these volunteers? They might be thinking, well, we can't do that. So could you speak into that and the wisdom of where the manpower comes from?
Just believe that it'll come. Sometimes no. I just ask people, can you help? Can you help with this? And it's kind of like inviting people to cut the bread, Jessica. They love being invited and to be a part of it. And I think I ask for volunteers, and then I might voluntold you. I'm going to ask for people to volunteer to help, but if you don't, I'm coming after you. I'm going to come and ask you, can you help me with this? Can you be a part in this small way? And when you ask someone, especially if it's someone newer, to help with something, like Michael was saying in his burritos and Bibles, they feel like, oh my goodness, but then they are so happy that you consider them a part of your family and you want them to be a part of what you're doing. And they might see you doing these things, but when you want them to be a part of it too, they just feel so happy and so grateful to be a part of it all.
Yeah, maybe like a tangible way of growing in generosity. We're growing, we give our acts, services, and tithes, and part of that, letting people give their service.
Yeah,
so
you believe in them, that they can do it. I think that's
Yeah.
a huge part of it, that you see something in them that they don't. I always say to my young adults, I'm like, I wish that you could see yourself the way I see you, the way God sees you. And if you could see what my eyes see, you would feel so differently about yourself.
Yeah.
So do you have a team locally around you that kind of rallies around, or what does the team atmosphere look like for you?
So our local church has a leadership team. We are a one board structure, and everything we do together. I might be the idea person in something, or Sam might be the idea person or something, or Ulysses, but we all rally around each other's ideas and supporting them. And sometimes there's the different yeses. There's like, yes, that's an awesome idea. And then there's, yes, I trust you. I'm going to support you. Even though I'm not sure about it. And then I have the regional board also, and that's another great group of lay people and pastors that come together and do awesome things and awesome work together. And it's been some culture change that I definitely been very intentional in being a cultivator of. But when I leave the regional board, I want to see it continue down that road. I want to set it up for success. And there's going to come a day, I'm sure, where I'm not going to be on the board of my local church, but I want to see that continue. And it shouldn't be about me. It should be teaching other people about how to do it. Work yourself out of a job. That is the best kind of leader you can be, is to work yourself out of a job, to teach other people to take over, even if it looks a little bit different.
I think
So
you just described mentorship. That's kind of cool.
yeah,
It's amazing.
yeah. And in that regional work of like shifting culture and trying to get people to open themselves to fresh expressions and this blended ecology, what are some ways you're kind of helping shift that culture, using your leadership to foster that?
Well, we have a big conference coming up in October that Michael is our keynote speaker for, and it's going to be a very different conference. It's always been a leadership conference. Some of it has been a little bit of a family reunion for the people all over the region coming together, which I love that part, but it shouldn't be the main part. It should really be about teaching. And so we're doing things. I kind of blew up the whole conference and it looks very different. And so why not invite Michael Adam Beck to come in, because he'll help me blow it up. And I like a little person who's a little bit of a rebel too. So we're doing things that are going to be very different there. And it's going to be challenging to some of our churches to think outside of the box and think a little bit differently. But I'm giving them the opportunity to have a space where they can ask the questions and bring up the hard reasons why there's a hard no on doing that. And so we can break it down and make them believe in themselves that they can actually do it and that it's not as hard as they think. And there's all different contexts. We can break down all the barriers if you give us the chance. And I can't wait to see what happens after that conference, to hear the stories of the way people have come to Christ through the avenues that they've been able to put in place and the successes. There are going to be some failures too, and we'll tell them that there's going to be some failures, but just pick up your britches and try something else. I think that it's not a one size fits all, but you can definitely do some great things if you just open yourself up to the Holy Spirit's leading. And that's what we're really going to be asking them to do.
Hmm.
You can have a big party around all the failures, a big failure party, and celebrate them all right along there.
Because you tried. And when you meet Jesus, that's what he's going to be looking. You tried. You did the best you could do. And if he tells me that, I'll be happy.
Amen.
Yeah. Wow, I think that's a lot of like wisdom that just came out and just was poured out of you between really discipling people, mentoring them into what you're doing now and building them up so that they can do it. That's repeating in Fresh Expressions, like you're discipling them to repeat what you're doing, both locally in Heritage Church and regionally, and then also within your Fresh Expression, you're doing that as a whole lifestyle. What do you kind of, within your young people, you talked about your young people a lot. What are the hopes that you see within them that they are bringing forth, that newness that you see in them? What is it that you see in them there?
I hope that they believe in themselves, that they learn that they are also very much loved children of God, and that God can use them in some new places and ways that they did not expect, and that they experience church capital C in a different way that I have instilled in them, and that God has used me to build up his kingdom, and that they are a part of that. They are not spectators, that they are actually a part of it, but also the responsibility for them to know that it's also their responsibility and what God's expecting them to do. It's not just me. We're equals in this, that they are as equally responsible as I am for spreading the kingdom around into this earth and reaching other people.
That's good.
Yeah.
Wow. So Lori, so good. Thank you for your time. Is there, how can people kind of follow along with you? What kind of social media do you do, and websites where they can kind of track what you got going on in Pennsylvania, Delaware?
So at the local church, GraceCrossingCC.org is our website. And, you'll see the different things that were on there. On our calendar, there is home church. There is camp. There's going to be messy church going on. So you'll see some of the things we're doing with that. And the recovery groups and different churches and different services we have going on at our local church. I didn't talk any about that, but we have several different churches that meet in our space that are reaching people of different ethnicities that we're not able to reach, like a Spanish-speaking congregation. So you can also reach me on ABCOPAD.org, which is our regional website, and you can click on the link and email me from there if you ever want to. If you have any questions or you're in Pennsylvania and you want to meet and have a meal together or attend home church or something, I would be happy to have anybody join, and I'd love to share what little I feel like I know and help you to start something that maybe you can do in your own local church. And I'm on all the socials: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. I have them all. And you can find me there and connect with me. I'll be more than happy to do that, and willing to talk with anybody who wants to learn more.
Thank you so much, Lori. And to those of you listening, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of New People, New Ways. If you enjoyed this conversation with Lori, go ahead and share it with a friend. And if you would like to connect with Fresh Expressions and want to learn more about Fresh Expressions, you can connect at freshexpressionsfl.org. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And we'll see you on the next episode of New People, New Ways.
Thank you.